What's going on, everyone? Matt Harmon here from Reception Perception. It's fantasy football season. It's August. Your drafts are right around the corner. So I figured now's a good time to let you guys know 6 players I am much higher than current Yahoo ADP on. Let's get into it. So we're talking 6 wide receivers that, based on, obviously opportunity, offensive ecosystem, but of course their reception perception charting data, I am much higher than current Yahoo ADP on. I built a little internal tool for myself to just sort of keep track of my rankings versus current Yahoo ADP. The ADP gap on these players right now here on August 20th, as we are filming this right now, we got 6 guys that I am at least 30 spots higher than current Yahoo ADP on. This is just from the last 7 days. And you can light me up in the comments about Yahoo ADP. But I work for Yahoo, okay? So that's the one I'm referencing here on this one. So I've got 6 players for you guys, again, that I am currently much higher than ADP consensus. I think this will probably hold for all of those platforms and everything else out there. It's a mix of a bunch of different guys. Some older players, some guys on second contracts, and 2 incoming rookies. So without further ado, let's get into it here. The first player that I am much higher on than ADP right now is 49ers rookie wide receiver Stribling, man. Here's the deal. I think people are just a little too slow on the uptake here on Stribling. I get it. He's become something of like a polarizing player because he was drafted higher than the consensus board. He was, kind of panned by some of the database scouts. I understand he's not a perfect prospect. And yet, when I evaluated him pre-draft for his prospect profile, I found him to be a really quality day 2 player. Actually, our most viewed video on this YouTube channel is James and I talking about Stribling as my favorite day 2 sleeper prior to the NFL draft. So shout out to Stribling and shout out to the 49ers for making that one a really interesting segment, one that got a lot of attention, of course. Shout out to them. But I didn't think he'd be the 33rd overall pick, but it's not as if this was some just complete bum of a prospect. There's a lot of really good appealing marks in Stribling's profile. And I get it. The first thing you're going to tell me here is Harmon. Looks like a lot of red routes on this tree. All right, number one, we're never just color counting here at receptionperception.com. All right, this is not a coloring book. This is a football evaluation site. And 2, honestly, 3 routes you can just go ahead and completely throw off here for Stribling. Like this corner route, comeback route, and post route. Stribling barely ran those routes at all. So it's not one of those situations where we need to freak out about Stribling having these 3 red routes. 1% of his routes were comebacks. 1% of his routes were corners. 1% of his 3% of his routes were post routes. These were obviously not routes that he ran very often. As a matter of fact, 2 routes, corner, 2 route, comeback, 6 routes, post routes. The fact that he was not successful on a grand total of, what are we talking about here? 5 routes. We don't care. All right. That those 3 routes don't even really matter. We're not doing coloring books. We're doing football evaluation. Now, the 9 route, that's one that he did run a significant amount, and he did not have an above average success rate. He was slightly below the average college prospect as separating on the 9 routes. However, couple routes that he did run with pretty decent volume. Slant routes, pretty high percentage there at 13% of his charted routes. The dig route, 15%. And he turned in really strong success rates on both patterns. By the way, you know what this 49ers offense loves? These in-breaking routes, especially for a player in Stribling that, if you look at the preseason, he's used off the ball as the Z receiver when he's in the outside. He's been kicking into the slot as a power slot-based player. Yeah, that's going to be some really good usage. He's going to get a lot of usage on those particular patterns there. And he showed an ability to separate. He showed an ability to win on those routes. Curl route success rate was also solid as well. Overall, Stribling does need to work on zone coverage. He did not have a high success rate versus zone coverage. That is an area that, for him to be a true number 1 receiver, or like a guy that gets consistently 8 to 10 targets a game, he'll have to improve the 17th percentile success rate versus zone. However, pretty solid marks against man coverage and a 52nd percentile success rate versus press. I think he actually has kind of some promising release moves in his overall his overall route tree right now, his overall portfolio. I think he's got some solid release moves off the line of scrimmage, and more critically, this is a guy that blocks. This is a guy that catches almost everything. You saw that again in the preseason, consistently attacking the ball away from the frame with his hands, cleanly catching the ball. And he's a bully after the catch. Like, he will break some tackles after the catch. He was in space on 56% of the catches I charted for his reception perception sample. He went down on first contact just 33% of those plays. And again, 70% contested catch rate. He dropped just one pass over his reception perception sample. And again, the blocking can't be understated here. I know you don't get fantasy points for blocking. I know that nobody's going to put together a highlight reel of just on Stribling blocking, but you know who cares about that? Kyle Shanahan, man. I mean, essentially what we're looking at here is a souped up version of Juwan Jennings. Jennings has been like a viable fantasy player each of the last 2 seasons. He had over 900 yards in 2024, replacing other guys with injuries. If you just look at this 49ers room right now, there's a lot of space for Stribling to climb up this depth chart. Could he even be like the number one receiver if Mike Evans goes down? I mean, that's not ideal. Like, we want Stribling in kind of this power slot Z receiver role. So Evans, we want him to kind of stay healthy for that. But at the same time, man, Stribling is just a good player that I think the community is kind of overthinking right now because he's weirdly become such a meme for the aggregators, and he wasn't a prospect that people like. So yeah, overall, man, Stribling is a guy that I want you all to draft in the late rounds of fantasy right now. Just a good quality receiver that I think people are overthinking. Second receiver that I am much higher than ADP on, that is Michael Wilson of the Arizona Cardinals. If you guys subscribe to the channel, which, by the way, if you're watching this video, subscribe to the channel. Give me a shot here on YouTube. We're really enjoying it. We just crossed 25,000 subscribers. We are building this channel up, and it is all thanks to you all. So if you're watching this video and you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, like the video, leave a comment, engage with us here, ask a question. If you ask a good question in the comments, I actually read those things. Okay, I know they say don't read the YouTube comments. The mean ones I try to scroll past. Good questions though, earnest questions, I will definitely answer those in the YouTube comments. Okay, I try to get back to everybody there. So again, subscribe to the channel. We're doing some good stuff here. If you do subscribe to the channel, you already know this. I have a video with Jordan Rodrigue of The Athletic and the NFL Daily podcast, someone who knows this Rams team very well, the Sean McVay coaching tree, whole video on why I'm Cardinals curious. And she helped me really break down the scheme and what to expect with these players. And one of my conclusions from that conversation and why I am so Cardinals curious is because I just don't believe that this team is going to be that bad on offense. I mean, there's some sources like in the sports book, they're the 32nd projected team in points scored this year. I think that's crazy. There's way too much talent for this offense to be that bad. One of those players is Michael Wilson. And look, do I think he's going to play a Puka Nacua role? Maybe not. But he is going to be the Z receiver in this offense. And look, if we're just looking at the route charts, all right, I get it. I'm not trying to say he's playing in the Puka role or he's going to have Puka Nacua production. Obviously, I like Jacoby Brissett as a game manager, a guy who can keep the train on the tracks. But he's not Matthew Stafford. All disclaimers said. You look at the routes that Michael Wilson is not all that successful on, right? The true vertical routes, 9 routes, post routes. That's not what this offense runs. Look at Puka Nacua's route chart. 8.3% of his routes, 9 routes, 4.3% post routes. Yeah, Michael Wilson doesn't really have that giddy up to truly separate down the field on a consistent basis. If he's the movement Z receiver in this offense, which I think he will be, Marvin Harrison Jr. as the X receiver, and of course they're going to blur the lines positionally and everything. Like, Michael Wilson's going to get some X receiver reps, which is something I wanted to see in the last offense. Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to get to run more routes from the slot. I already saw that in the Cardinals, not the Hall of Fame game, but the first preseason game. Marvin Harrison Jr., shout out to Stan Boston in the RP Discord, charted the snaps from the preseason game. Oh, love that. Right? We're spreading the charting alignment gospel. He had Marvin Harrison Jr. sub 70% of his snaps on the line of scrimmage. So again, that's a huge change for Marvin Harrison Jr. as well. But these guys both having their roles blurred will really help them. But when Michael Wilson is lined up as that movement Z receiver, He's going to be running a lot of the routes that he was pretty solid on last season. Dig routes, just under 72%. Puka Nacua runs a ton of those, as you see. Out routes, just under 73%. Puka Nacua runs an above average rate of 9 routes. Decent amount of slants, 18.4%. That's one of Michael Wilson's best routes. Curl routes, 11.2%. That is one of Michael Wilson's best routes. So Michael Wilson's a good player, man. And people just don't want to click on him at all in fantasy. I think it's kind of crazy. I understand like he's going to regress off of what he did last year. People are more than baking that in to the outlook for Michael Wilson right now. He's going off the board in Yahoo drafts over the last 7 days at the 105th overall pick. All right. We got it. He's going to take a step back from what he did last season. Nobody's expecting that level of a repeat, but I still think he's a value at the, again, 105th overall pick. Wide receiver 39. I have him ranked as wide receiver 33. I just like this Cardinals offense. I think they're going to be better than people think because Michael Wilson and some of these other guys are quality players. Number 3 player that I am much higher on than Yahoo ADP, and this one is not a interesting young breakout player or a rookie receiver whatsoever. This is a tried and true veteran. It's Michael Pittman Jr. for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this one's pretty simple here. People don't want to draft Michael Pittman. I get it. 121st overall ADP in Yahoo drafts over the last 7 days. Wide receiver 46. I have Michael Pittman Jr. inside my top 40 wide receivers. I do want to just disclaim that a good part of this analysis is, based on obviously what he does as a route runner and how that fits with Aaron Rodgers, the current version of Aaron Rodgers. The other part of this too is that it just really is a structural thing for Michael Pittman. If you are late in your drafts and you kind of punted off the wide receiver position, certainly if you play in best ball and you're just looking for like a guy who can get you some weeks, Michael Pittman is that guy right now. Because if you just look at, again, his route tree, 87% success rate on flat routes, almost a 91% success rate on slants, 80.4% success rate on curls. That's a lot of the quick hitting stuff that Aaron Rodgers wants to throw right now. If you guys remember the Mike McCarthy offense back in Green Bay, and look, he's evolved a little bit since this when we saw him in Dallas, but it was a lot of like slant flats, a lot of slant flat, a lot of slant flat, a lot of slant flat, get the ball out quick. And Aaron Rodgers likes to do that stuff, especially now as he's gotten older. He doesn't want to really get under center a ton and push the ball over the intermediate middle of the field. It's a lot of the quick game stuff, a lot of the free access throws, and that's what Michael Pittman is going to be. He's going to be that guy, the off-ball Z receiver. He's going to kick into the slot as the big slot occasionally. So this fits really well with Aaron Rodgers' game. It's not the most exciting click in the world. I understand that, but I think there's a real shot that Michael Pittman leads the Steelers in both catches and yards this season. DK Metcalf hasn't practiced in a while, dealing with an injury in training camp. Michael Pittman has as well, but it sounds like his injury is a little more known, a little less mysterious there. And just DK Metcalf's game doesn't necessarily overlap with Rodgers as much, especially now that Pittman is there. Like they kind of tried to use DK Metcalf on the quick hitters last year. I honestly kind of tried to use him a little bit like Michael Pittman, which is not what I would do last season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now they just have Michael Pittman, who's a reliable player. He's going to be where he's supposed to be every single time. You look at his success rate versus zone coverage. He has been over 80% consistently throughout the course of his career. He's going to be where he's supposed to be, right route depth, right level of the field. Like him and Aaron Rodgers are going to have a really good chemistry this season. Again, he's not the most exciting player in the world, not the best click, if you're looking for upside, but if you're just looking for somebody to get you some weeks, Michael Pittman can get you through. I have him ranked much higher than his current ADP right now. Again, 121st player off the board. Let's go to a Packers receiver here, and someone you all will not be surprised that I'm excited about, much more excited than current Yahoo drafters, and that is Jayden Reed, Green Bay Packers wide receiver. He's going off the board right now outside the top 115 picks, wide receiver 44. I have him as wide receiver 37. And I know, all right, Matthew Golden's going to play in 2 receiver sets. Matthew Golden's going to be the X receiver. Jayden Reed's the slot. Okay, Christian Watson's the Z. He's going to be on the field a lot more, and I like Christian Watson. Frankly, I'm actually a little bit higher than consensus on Matthew Golden just because he goes so late in Yahoo drafts. Like at times he's been outside the top 140 players. Totally fine. Just take a shot on Matthew Golden and see what happens. But for me, going back and charting Matthew Golden last year, I saw a little bit of a hit or miss player Somebody that I really don't have like a strong take on what he is going to be this year. But I've seen Jayden Reed be a really good player at the NFL level. We're talking about somebody that has beat man coverage consistently over the course of his career from the slot. He wins on, and this is something I think as we're showing on the screen right now. By the way, 2025, not even Jayden Reed's best season. He wasn't healthy basically at all last year. Maybe he comes in with the foot fracture, tries to play through it, gets the collarbone injury, the shoulder injury, the clavicle situation, I believe it was, in week 2. We didn't see him for a long time after. It's like kind of a lost year for Jayden Reed. And still, look at the routes that he separates well on. We're not talking about just the quick hitting ones. Dig route, 86%. Out route, 77.3%. Oh, yeah, baby. 75% of the corner. We're talking about times where even at different points in his career, he's been really good on post routes too. Yeah, 2024 season, he was cooking on post routes. Just wasn't 100% healthy last year. I think Reed is just a very misunderstood player. Yes, is he slot only? Sure. I mean, look, if it was me, I would play him more in 2 receiver sets. I would use him more on the outside. That's fine. But what really matters for Reed this year is that the Packers are going to be in more 11 personnel sets, especially like Luke Musgrave, their tight end too, is banged up right now. They're not going to be in some of these heavy personnel groupings. One, because I think they're just, kind of moving away from that generally. Also personnel. Secondly, their defense is not going to be as good this year. They're going to be in more trailing situations. Not going to have Micah Parsons to start the year. I just think the defense overall on paper looks like a unit that could take a step back. So they're going to be throwing the football more naturally. And also, if you watch their first preseason game, this really stood out to me. The Packers are playing with a lot more tempo right now. They're trying to get the plays into the huddle faster. And last year, the Packers are one of the slowest paced teams in the NFL. I mean, it's kind of always been that way with Matt LaFleur because like some of it's Aaron Rodgers, like he runs a pretty slow paced offense because he's all the point stuff at the line of scrimmage and et cetera, et cetera. But still, even last year, the Packers were not a team that ran a ton of plays. They were 24th in plays per game, 59 plays per game. Average overall pace, 25th in the NFL. Seconds per play, 22nd. It's pretty clear that's something that Matt LaFleur wants to change. It's something I've talked about with Nate Tice on Football 301. He thinks tempo and getting plays in faster is going to be one of the trends of the NFL this year. And it looks like the Packers are on the forefront. And if that happens in Green Bay, Reed is just going to be on the field a ton more than we're used to seeing. He's never had a snap rate over 75% over the course of his NFL career. Maybe he doesn't get to 75 this year, but it will be higher because less receiver rotation with the lack of depth at the position right now after Dobbs is out the door, Wicks is out the door. Like they're not going to be rotating on Savion Williams and some of these guys consistently, famous last words, knock on wood, whatever. Reed's just going to be on the field more. And because they're trying to get these plays in faster, more no huddle, it's just going to naturally lead to more 11 personnel. So I kind of think the 2 receiver set conversation for Jayden Reed, it's just not as important this year as it was last year, even though I am sitting here recognizing that, yes, Matthew Golden will be on the field more often than Jayden Reed. But I think from a targets per route run, a yards per route run perspective, Jayden Reed is going to be the guy that is just more productive. And frankly, Reed has been that over the course of his NFL career. He has been a top 20 player in yards per route run since he entered the NFL here, So, okay. Jayden Reed, good player. Jayden Reed, good player. Someone I'm willing to bet on. Another guy I'm willing to bet on here, my 5th player that I'm much higher than Yahoo ADP on, and nobody is surprised by this one too. If you're a Reception Perception subscriber, Jalen Coker, Carolina Panthers wide receiver. I understand Panthers offense, Bryce Young. You guys, you can flame me in the comments with the, hey, Bryce Young's averaged under 200 passing yards per game. I think Bryce Young's going to average more than 200 passing yards per game this season. I also think Jalen Coker's just a baller, man. And if we're just talking bet on talent, he's a player that I want to make the talent bet on. 133rd overall ADP on Jalen Coker right now. I think that just straight up misunderstands a couple of things about him and the situation that he is in. For one, again, no one's just really drafting Coker 64th overall wide receiver. I have him at wide receiver 44, so I'm way ahead of consensus on this one here. And there's a couple things to understand about Coker. Again, from a player perspective, his reception perception charting was awesome this past year. We're not talking about like, oh yeah, good for a former UDFA, interesting young player. Wow, he really outkicked his draft costs. It's so nice to see. Cute story, UDFA. No. Jalen Coker is just straight up one of the best young receivers in the NFL right now, period. No qualifications needed about him being a former undrafted player. This is someone that just checks so mmany boxes that you want to see. He is a player who, yes, he's mostly a slot guy. He's been a power slot so far in his NFL career. 52% of his sampled snaps in the slot last year, 63% off the line of scrimmage, but that's actually lower than his year one rate of snaps off ball because he started to play more as a boundary X receiver. I mean, you guys saw this against the Rams, not just in the playoff game, but the first time they played the Rams and won, the Panthers upset the Rams last season. Runs a vertical route, a go route as the X receiver on the outside and beats press man coverage. And that's what Jalen Coker does. 75.9% success rate versus man, 73.8% success rate versus 75.9% success rate versus press, just under 74% success rate versus man coverage. Yeah, this guy beats man coverage and press coverage at a really high rate for a young receiver. I mean, he is up there. His success rate versus press is up there with some of the big boys in the NFL. And if you look at the player comparison tool, the guy that he compares most favorably to, we're talking about multiple comps here, Chris Godwin. And I wrote up this in the player profile for Jalen Coker. Subscribe to the website, check it out. I mentioned that he kind of reminds me of Chris Godwin. And then we update the player comparison tool, and there's 3 Chris Godwin comps in the top 10 here, including 2 in the top 3. Jacoby Myers is still a player. Yeah, he does remind me a lot of Jacoby Myers as well. That's the other guy that he kind of is in that same ballpark, bigger slot Z receivers. But the Chris Godwin comp I love because Godwin, he was able to play. Yeah, again, he's mostly a power slot, but he could play outside on the line of scrimmage. His charting looks so similar to Chris Godwin right before he really broke out in 2019. Just a baller, man. Like, yeah, Chris Godwin could beat man and press coverage at a similar rate as we're showing here to Jalen Coker. And Coker, like him being able to be this guy is going to allow them to move Tetero McMillan into the slot more often, which we saw in the first preseason game. They were like 50-50 who was the primary slot receiver in the preseason. I think that's something we're going to see from the Panthers this year. This offense isn't going to be the same kind of run-heavy, slow, heavy personnel group offense that we've seen previously. They're going to spread the field a lot more often. They're going to get more guys out in the route so that Bryce Young can do the point guard stuff. And that's where I just think there is a little bit of untapped upside here. Do I think Bryce Young is going to be, some top 10 quarterback in the NFL? I absolutely do not. But could he be like a version of Alex Smith later in his career? That was one of the upside comps for him, which, you want to spend the first overall pick on Alex Smith. I don't know about that, but I think a guy like Alex Smith and even this version of Bryce Young could be a quality distributor of the football to really talented wide receivers. And yes, Tetero McMillan is a baller, dude. I'm totally in on that. But I think we are discounting how good the second receiver is in Carolina, which is clearly Jalen Coker. Again, comparable to Chris Godwin, 75.9% success rate versus press. At wide receiver 64 ADP, I'm just going to close my eyes and make a bet on that level of talent, which is significant for Jalen Coker. So yeah, I'm way higher than Yahoo ADP on Coker. I think he's someone you could take late in your drafts, late 9th round, early 10th round. That's kind of where I have him ranked right now in that tier of guys who are going to be on the field a ton and have some volatility, sure, but have high upside. And I do think Jalen Coker as a talent has significant upside. And I kind of think people just aren't paying attention to a little bit what's going to be a schematic left turn for Carolina that I'm not saying it's going to take Bryce Young to the promised land. He's going to be worth what the Panthers gave up for him, but I think he could at least be like an Alex Smith style of distributor. And we've seen Alex Smith with good receivers be able to give them some production. I think that's what we're going to see here with Jalen Coker this year. So really undervalued late round pick. And from a dynasty perspective too, if you guys didn't know, I have my dynasty rankings consistently updated with a tool that compares it to the market, how people view these guys out there. Coker is one of the guys I'm much higher on than the market, which I don't think will surprise anyone. Another player that I've been higher on, both redraft, dynasty as a prospect, is the sixth and final player we're going to talk about here today, Concepcion, the guy that I am highest on relative to Yahoo drafters, because they, over the last 7 days, have taken Concepcion as the 131st player off the board, and I've got him ranked almost inside the top 90. 92nd overall player for me is Concepcion. So that is a full, right now, 39 spots higher than ADP. This is a flag plant player for me, straight up. He plays for the Browns. Browns have quarterback questions. I don't want to just yada that or wave it away. Obviously, if we're 3 weeks into the season and Concepcion's not doing anything from a production standpoint, we're all going to know why. Because of the quarterback situation. I get it. But man, this guy is a great player. Yeah, see, this is going to be me, right? Terrific. That'll be me. That'll be me. If we're 3 weeks into the season, he's not doing anything because we've got to try to do the sunk cost fallacy thing with Deshaun Watson, which is probably what they're going to do. But Concepcion is, I just think people don't understand how good this guy is. If you didn't watch my prospect breakdown of him, you probably aren't clear of just what a talented player this is. By the way, my shout out to Zach is just absolutely screwing me by putting his route chart up next to Malik Neighbors. But I think this is instructive, actually, because, Neighbors is a better prospect than Concepcion, is a tier 1 guy. But I think some of their routes are really comparable in this, kind of short to intermediate area. Look at Concepcion's success rate on slants, the flats, the curls relative to Malik Neighbors. Like, they're in the same ballpark there. Now, Neighbors was a much better catcher of the football, the whole deal. He's a little bit bigger. But the reason that Neighbors was able to, well, let's be honest, that Neighbors is a stud. He's knocking on that door of being a tier 1 receiver in the NFL. Okay. He's awesome. But the reason he was able to survive a bad landing spot in year 1 with Daniel Jones and a broken Brian Daboll offense was that they could just scam him touches as a create a touch player that season. And I think that's what's going to happen here with Concepcion in the Browns offense. I mean, Todd Monken is so excited about this guy, and I'm so excited about what I saw in the first preseason game. Usage from the slot, usage outside, in 12 personnel, moving across the formation, getting snaps out of the backfield. And that's what KC can do, man. Yes, he can get open. 92nd percentile success rate versus man coverage, best in this class. 87th percentile success rate versus press. 83.2% success rate versus zone. Guy can separate at all 3 levels, as you're seeing here. He can burn you deep. He can get you short, the whole deal. But he's also incredible with the ball in his hands. I mean, he almost housed a punt return, kick return in his first preseason game as well. That's why Todd Monken comes out after that game and says, we got to get the football in his hands as many times as possible, because this is just a tough player to bring down, and you need a player like this to create layups and explosive plays via those layups for your shaky quarterback play. So yes, obvious questions about the Browns. But Denzel Boston being an ex-receiver and establishing himself as a day 1 starter right away for this team just means more off-ball usage for Concepcion, who, other people compare him to Zay Flowers. He's a lot bigger, thicker, and sturdier than Zay Flowers. And I think you're going to see that with him as an after-catch player here. So I get it. My player that I'm highest on relative to ADP, someone from the Browns offense. But this is an incredible prospect, and I think there's a shot he could be the most productive rookie wide receiver this year, because number one, obviously it's tough. Carnell Tate, he's the healthiest right now because Mekhi Lemons had a hamstring injury. Jordan Tyson's going to miss games into the regular season with his hamstring injury. Carnell Tate's the other guy he'd compete with. Carnell Tate's not going to get these like designer targets that Concepcion is. So I think it's very live that even in a bad Browns offense, like if Shedeur Sanders can just hit the layups, which, Shedor's got plenty of issues, but he's at least an accurate quarterback. If he can hit the layups for we're talking about a lot of easy button catches, and this is just a really explosive player, a talent that I'm absolutely willing to bet on. He was my wide receiver 2 in this draft class. And the more I look at my dynasty rankings, or certainly my rookie redraft rankings, I think he's at least the wide receiver 2 heading into this season in fantasy football, someone that I think is going to really surprise people with his production, even if the Browns offense isn't very good. All right. With that, those are the 6 players at the wide receiver position because of their reception perception charting, but also some of the outside variables as well that reception perception tries to isolate players from that I am highest on relative to Yahoo ADP. If you want more, check out receptionperception.com because I have my live cheat sheet up on the site. If you're drafting in fantasy this year, you can use this cheat sheet in your drafts. It's interactive. You can click off players. You can print it. If you're a boomer like me and you want the printed version, you can do that. But you can also have it up on your iPad, on your phone. You can have it on your desktop and click off players live as they go off the board. Double click it when they're players that you drafted. So it's really interactive, super useful for your drafts. And I'm keeping that thing updated consistently. So that is on receptionperception.com, available to all subscribers. In addition to the profiles that you saw here today, also available on receptionperception.com. I am adding new profiles every Monday leading up through August here. So we've got a couple of more drops left. Keenan Allen, going to have a profile up on him after he signed with the Indianapolis Colts. Got a Chris Godwin profile coming. Some big boy receivers that we all know are good, but let's check out their route charts anyways. Jamar Chase, we'll see Lamb, Justin Jefferson. Why not? Plus, on August 31st, I'm going to drop some, under the radar type players. Can we get excited about Dontavian Wicks again? Can we? We'll see. Maybe we'll get his profile up before the month is out. All right. Appreciate you guys watching. Subscribe to the channel. Like I said, we cleared 25,000. Let's get to 30,000. Let's get to 30,000 before September is up. I need your help to do it. I'd appreciate your support. Thank you guys for watching this one. I'll catch you guys in the next video.